Bonjour, bienvenido, willkommen, welcome. Today we have a discussion with Ingrid Bergman and Carmele Jayo in our Canada-Spain series. Unfortunately, Vivek Shraya cannot be with us this morning, but she will be here on stage at 5 p.m. So I'm sure you will all come back at 5 p.m. also. Ingrid Bergman will conduct and moderate this discussion. She is a Canadian journalist, a scholar, and a cultural manager specializing in cultural reportage, and she has journalist training. So, je vous souhaite une excellente séance. Have a nice and wonderful discussion. Please join me on stage. Muchas gracias.
Gracias. Well, good morning, everyone. It's such a pleasure to be here today with Carmela Zhao and this conversation on gender, questions of gender and identity between our respective guest of honor countries, Canada and Spain. So I'm going to start with a very, very broad and amplified question, shedding light on how gender identities are constructed in our cultures. So keeping this in mind, can I ask you to characterize how you situate your writing as a Spanish/Basque author? In other words, what does it mean to you to be a writer tackling the question of gender in your literary craft in your country today? And be as broad as you like.
Okay. Good morning. Thank you. And first of all, I apologize for my English. It's not very good English. I thought that maybe I could speak in Spanish, so I will try to explain what I want to say. And so gender, well, in all my books appears this topic, and I think that it appears because it's a topic that is as a theme that is very, very that has a very strong influence in our lives. I think the gender roles have a very strong influence in our attitudes, day-by-day attitudes, and sometimes we don't think about this. And I think literature is a good way to show this influence, for example, because literature, I think, has the power or is a good tool to show what is hidden behind the normality, no? The day-by-day normality. I think there are a lot of things that are not normal that are hidden there. No? So I think it's a good tool to show these things because you explain this putting on the shoes of another person, and looking at the world from the eyes of another person. So for me, it's a good way to see what this thing, what the gender roles, what influence have in our life. And I think also that maybe in the context of my country and in the context of what is happening now in the world, I think it's a very important moment for the feminists, for the rights of women in the world. It's an important era. All the eras were important, but I think it's very strategic at this moment. And for example, in Basque Country and Spain, the last 8th of March, where the demonstrations were very massive, and I think it's an important time to talk about this.
And are you personally implicated in demonstrations and the activism? I mentioned because in Argentina, the women writers are very, very activist oriented. Are you personally implicated in that?
Yeah, but like another people, but I think my way to be implicated in that is with my my literature, no? Because, for example, in this last book, the Father's House, I talk about the masculinity, no, and how we men and women, since we are born, how society have different expectations from us, depending on we are women or men, no? And that is so determinant for our lives, for our public life, and also for our more intimate situations that we live, that how we fall in love, for example, or how we have sex, or how gender is there telling us, the roles are telling us how we have to be. And sometimes we think that we take decisions or we write or we talk free, but we don't realize that we have these roles
that are internalized in us,
very
that speak
internalized
through us, right? Exactly. And staying with that, so gender being articulated through language, and culture. In Canada, we have a multiplicity of perspectives where gender is fluid, non-binary. Our Indigenous writers bring two-spirit perspectives. It's a much broader definition of gender in Canada that we have, because we have, so many perspectives, so many cultures, as you do also in Spain. But Spanish itself is a clearly patriarchal language. Spanish is a very the language is very implicit. The roles of the mother and the father in the Spanish language. Yeah. But how are gender stereotypes at work in the Euskera language? And how can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, we have in Basque language, in Euskera, don't have this, for example, la, lo, we have not
the pronouns.
The pronouns are not determinate. There are
neutral
women or neutral. But that doesn't mean that the language can't be sexist. So I think it's the use of the language at last what determinate if you are writing something sexist or not. No? In our case, I think we are a minority language, and sometimes I think I don't know sure, but I think. Being a minority language can help you also to see another minorities, not only languages, not only these situations in the world that are minoritized from the gender, for the race, for the another themes. No? So it's a good place to see this. That in the world are a lot of little words, no? I think.
That's a very good question for us Canadians, because we have, not only the official languages of English and French, but the world, and especially I live in Montreal, our world is divided in Francophone, Anglophone, and Allophone, meaning that Allophone is if any other language is your mother tongue. Then we also have 60 Indigenous languages about, more or less, So we're a very, very multilingual country, and every language expresses gender in a different form, So it's very similar to Spain in a sense, because there's, Spain also has many minority languages, and so now let's talk a little bit about the genre itself. So you yourself, you are a writer, a journalist, and you also serve as a communications coordinator for the Instituto Vasco de la Mujer. So how do each of the disciplines that you operate in, because you're multiple women, multiple roles at the same time, how does that inform your writing? And I would also connect it to your own characters, because Nerea is a journalist like you, and Ishmael is a writer like you. So tell us about those roles, your professional roles, and how they influence your authorship.
I think everything you do in your life that has a very direct influence in what you write. That's we use imagination to write, but we use eyes and ears and what we see every day and what we see around in our society. And I think one thing that a writer have to do is to look around. So Yeah, of course. The things I do every day have influence. And when I write about things I know, or I try to write about things I know. I can't write about life or an astronaut. I don't know. So yeah, in my mother's hands, my first novel, the main character was a journalist like me, was a woman like me, at the age more or less like me, but it's not me. Of course, you are in all of your characters. I think when you write, you are in all of them, but not only you and the people that is around you and the society you live. And I think that a writer has to be attentive, yeah,
Or mindful?
yeah, to to take these signs of the society and try to explain what these signs are telling, no, in this moment, because, like I said, behind normality are so many things that we need to explain and to understand. And I think books, the fiction, help us to understand them.
That's wonderful. I was going to find, because I have a perfect question to follow up with this. So let me, 1 second here. I have so much to ask you, and I see that we don't have that much time, so I'm like, where am I going to take this? Just 1 second. Okay, so then when you're casting light, I mean, this is a question that would follow up what you were just saying. So when you're casting light on the questions on the questions of cis heteronormativity, you know, as you're casting light on that, is it do you see your purpose to help readers reflect on these roles and to transform them, to change their minds? Like your role is not to teach, but it is to, like, how do you see your literature in a, I don't want to use the word pedagogical, but as a place of reflection and transformation for the reader? Do you think about that as you're writing? Do you take that as part of your mission as a writer? Like, what is that? Because there is an educational part of, I mean, because you are basically learning about gender involves unlearning, as Maria Teresa Andreto says, you know, so you have to unlearn. How do you, what does that question mean to you?
Yeah, I don't want to teach nothing, and I don't want the reader to feel that I'm trying to teach. I'm trying to show the lives of people from different perspectives. For example, in The Father's House, there are 3 main characters, and I speak from the 3 perspectives. No? So for me, it's very important. The fiction help us to do that. Okay, to see the world from the eyes from another person, and this is very good to see things that you don't see in the day by day. So when we read fiction, we are more open. We don't, when we are talking with someone or reading a newspaper, sometimes we are reading and we are thinking at the same time what we think about that. I don't think that is like that, or yes. But in fiction, we are more disarmed, like open,
yes. Yeah.
and we go inside. And for that is a good tool for empathy or for understanding life of another kind of people that are not like you, and it's a good tool to understand that it depends on from where are you looking at the world or at the society or reality. You can look at very, very different reality. So for that, I think that it's very good to sensibilize. So, for example, with this last book, I had a very good experience with men. A lot of men wrote me or told me about the book, and they told me that they have seen things that they do every day, and until now they haven't realized what they were doing. I don't. Uh, they for telling the book helped them to see some things that they do that they are nowhere aware until now. No? So for me, I think it's a good tool to sensibilize, but I don't write thinking I'm going to sensibilize people. No, I write what I feel, I write what I see, and I would like a reader to see that reality and think. No, not show. I think reality is like this. No.
Perfect. I just want to move also to one question about, again, now moving on to genre, the issues of genre, because you describe yourself very often as more of a short story writer than a novelist, even though you have quite a few novels. And you mentioned that one of your favorite short story writers is Alice Munro from Canada.
Yeah.
You know, so tell us a little bit about, because again, this is a bridge between Canada and Spain. How Alice informs, if she informs your work, like if she inspires you, what Alice means to you. What's your favorite novel? If you can talk a little bit about her work.
Yeah. Well, her short stories for me are perfect. I am in love with her short stories. I think she has an ability to go inside this complexity of our lives, and it seems that in her short stories, it seems that what she is telling us is very normal, very ordinary. Or the things that, but they have a lot of peso,
gravitas or weight.
Yeah, she goes to the central things of life, no? And relationships, what is hidden in this, the words that we don't say. I think that's a big word. No? I think in our day by day we use. All of us have a lot of problems, but in our day by day we don't express this. No? We talk with more superficial. No? And I think literature in general, and the work on Alice Munro especially, he's very good in showing this that you don't say, but it's inside this internal world, and for me it's a master.
Do you read Alice Munro in English or Spanish? Or
No, in Spanish. In Spanish, yeah. Well, I read some short stories in English, but I still catch better in Spanish everything. Yeah.
So speaking of reading in English, I mean, for both, for minority language, writers, it's very important it's a really big deal to be translated to English and to German, you know. So tell us, how do you feel about being translated to majority dominant languages being from a minority language? How do you feel about that in terms of your work?
For every language it's important to be translated, but for minority language is crucial. No? We have a very limited number of readers in our language, so for us it's very important. A lot of times we can't do directly from Basque to German. Sometimes we've done, but you need a bridge, another language between. And for us also, Spanish is a good bridge to reach to another languages, no? And in this case, for example, in all my books, I'm the Spanish translator of my books. No? So that's something. We are bilingual. We live in Spanish and in Basque. So I write the Basque book, but I write also the book in Spanish. It's not a a translation only. It's how can I say this? How can I write this in Spanish?
So basically, you rewrite it yourself.
I
you know?
rewrite my books in Spanish.
Well, there's a big debate in the literary world right now with translators for having translators put their name on the covers of books, because many translators feel exactly that they're rewriting the story. You know, they're just as much of the. And it's interesting, obviously, that you feel the same way.
And I think we don't give the translators the importance they have. I think in the books you have the author and then you see the translator. And I think it's very, very, very important what they do.
And especially because you do it yourself, and you realize exactly what the complexities of basically rewriting the work in another language. You know, it's
translating my books, I realize what the difficulty of that, how difficult it is. But for us, it's difficult, but it's also a good chance, because you can see your writing from another point of view. You see it it's like seeing your writing from a mirror, and you see things that you don't see when you are creating. So it's good for us. You learn a lot about your writing also when you translate yourself or your books.
Wonderful. Well, because this is very short, I have to address like the main topics. You know, I want to make sure that we touch on all the important issues, and we can't talk about gender without talking about violence. You know, in Canada, Indigenous women and girls are overrepresented as victims of feminicide. You know, we have a crisis in Canada with missing and murdered Indigenous women. If you want to do the hashtag is hashtag MMIW, and it's an ongoing issue in our country. And immediately I think of writers like Natasha Canapé-Fontaine, who are very active about bringing this again to light, you know. So tell us, you know, about violence, or the role of violence. I mean, you know, the opening scene of La Casa del Padre immediately comes to mind, you know, in terms of violence. Tell us about violence in your writing.
Yeah, violence is there. Not very clear, but it's there all the time, no? Yes, I think when I wrote this novel, I had in my mind una curiosidad. Curiosity how men feel when they, for example, see on television and in the news of a rape or a woman that was murdered. And I always thought they think this has nothing to do with them or not, or they feel that has something to do with them because our men have this curiosity, no? And I think that's why I try to go inside the man's
the mind
of a man. No? In this case, the main character, he feels fear for her daughters, what can happen to his daughters, but at the same time, he feels guilty because he's a man when something happens, when violence is there. So, and he can't understand that feeling. No? He says, why I have to feel this guilty if I didn't do anything. No? So I think the violence is there, and I think this has. I think when we learn to be a man or a woman since we are born, I think in the way men learn to be a man, they learn violence. They learn this competitivity between them. This you have to be the best. All of this aggressiveness, and it's there. And this is one thing that has to change. No, the way men learn to be men.
Thank you, Carmela. And my last question, because we have 5 minutes, has to do with, because again, can't talk about gender without talking about family or the roles of the family. And so, the word madre and padre feature even in the titles of your book. So tell us a little bit about, in Spain, the family roles in the nuclear family are very set and very rigid, And tell us a little bit about that, and also, but mostly, how you came to write about family. It's a prominent theme in terms of the father and the mother in your books and in your work. Why are you interested about that? Why is it a recurring theme? Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. It's a place, the family is a place where of transmission of values, of transmission of a lot of things. We learn a lot of things inside our families. These expectations that I said, if you are a man or a woman, you learn in your family first. What they expect from you, you learn in your family. And for me, it's very important to show, in both books appears, the silence of the families, the silence that is inside the families. Those words that we don't say, but sometimes the silence transmits a lot. Sometimes it's not necessary to say directly, you have to be like that, or you have to be like that. The things we don't say, we don't transmit, we don't say, but we transmit inside the family. There are a lot of things. So for me, it's a very, very important place. I don't know if it would say place, but where the transmission of a lot of things. We learn to be like we are in our family first. So in all my stories appears the mother and the father, and
well, thank you very much, Carmela. It was a pleasure to speak with you. Thank you so much. And I invite everybody to continue enjoying the programming here in the Canada Pavilion, and wish you a great day and a great Buchmesse. Thank you.
Thank you.